And we're live. Welcome, Delano.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for
Mr.
having
Delano
me.
McKenzie is joining us today in the Real Talk, talking about the quality control processes, ISO, AS, the differences. These are a lot of, I would say, not unknown, but a lot of topics that aren't discussed in the industry today, especially manufacturing distribution. People have a lot of certifications, but there's not really in-depth or a little surface. This is probably the surface where people say, oh, you're AS certified or you're not certified. So we really want to bring it back a little bit, take a step back and understand what the certifications are, simplify it, as you say, for dummies, and also talk with Delano and his history and what he does for IBS Electronics globally as a global operations manager, and he heads the quality department as well. And so welcome, Delano.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Welcome to this. So we start with, who is Mr. Delano McKenzie?
Well, I am Delano McKenzie, and again, thank you, Rob, for having me on Real Talk. I know some of the previous guests are very prestigious and awesome to have on here.
Well, let me stop that. You are prestigious. You are a dedicated person to our operations. You've added a lot of value, so you're prestigious to the IBS global entity itself. So don't take that. Don't take anything away from that. You know, you do a lot for the company, and you do a lot for the global operations, the people, and we really value your all your hard work that you put in and day out.
Appreciate that. Well, a little bit about myself. I'm Delano McKenzie. One of the mottos that I like to say is nothing in life happens to you; it happens for you. And I've always lived by that, and I've always been humbled by that. And to be a better person, to be better for my family and for my colleagues, for our customers, for our suppliers, and I've always lived by that and stood by that.
Great. So, I mean, a little history and background. You know, what's your history and background in the industry? I know you come from, from where you're raised, and also the industry where you started in electronics, and where you are today.
Yeah. So my history. I mean, going back to where I was born, first of all, because it kind of plays into what I've done my whole life and what I do is I was born in South Africa. We moved to the U.S. in the 90s to escape the apartheid, and we came here with my 3 older brothers and my 2 sisters. And that kind of inspired me, coming here as an immigrant to really do better, as a person, and to succeed. We went to high school here in Orange County, California, and also went to college here in Orange County, California. And my older brothers have always been nerds, I guess you can say, and they were into computers and stuff like that. And I kind of followed their footsteps. And as a 14-year-old, I went into college to learn how to build computers.
14-year-old?
Yeah, as a 14-year-old, I went to Orange Coast College to achieve my CompTI certification.
Oh, for the electronic. Okay.
Which is just basic stuff, basic general certification, how to build a computer, how the storage and hard drive infrastructure works. And basically my love and my understanding for electronics started there. And I've been building computers ever since I was old enough to go to the store or get a ride to the store to buy, graphic cards or memory or computer cases, whatever electronics goes into a computer.
Well, taking a step, listen to that, but saying, you put in the nerds and stuff, but computing is our lives today. So going to that industry as your family or as your older brothers, I mean, there was some foresight. It was unknowns that this was going to take over our lives because everything's digital these days. So it actually was a great area and a great emphasis to go into. It was computing, processing, even coding and understanding that. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. And also coming from living the American dream, coming from South Africa. I mean, you blend in very well into the U.S.
Yeah.
What people wouldn't know, and especially you don't have that type of Afrikaans accent.
Yeah.
So maybe you lost it as you came here. I mean, probably as you've been here many years, probably that accent is gone little. I mean, actually dwelled off. So you still speak Afrikaans, correct?
Yeah. So I still speak my native language, which is Afrikaans.
Yeah.
And, our parents would never let me lose that native tongue, if you will. So
Yeah. Well, moving forward now into it. So how did you get into electronics?
Well, I mean, besides from the building computers, I, just stumbled across it. One day I was, I was walking from high school. I was walking through our local, neighborhood in Newport Beach, and there was some construction going on there. So I walked by, and the construction manager was like, "Hey, do you want to help us break some concrete?" And I said, "Sure." And long story short, that breaking of concrete actually landed me a job at a industrial and electrical engineering firm in Santa Ana. And that firm would then hire me for about 10 years before I chose to leave. And that was the beginning
The
of
start of the electronics career
Yeah.
that you've taken,
Yeah. So
So what were the jobs and things we started from there, and where'd you work up to? What did you?
Yeah, so I started basically at, I would say, about 19 years old. I was at the factory in electronics manufacturing. We were an OEM building a product, and I started sweeping the floors, taking out the trash, basic janitor work. And I proved my worth. I put in my time. I went through the assembly of the product. I went to building the actual product. And then one time, one of the older gentlemen was one of the purchasing managers was getting ready for retirement because he had been there for about 25, 30 years. And he wanted me to fill in for him for Mondays and Wednesdays when he was out at the doctor's. And so I learned the ropes of basic purchasing, basic sourcing, basic purchasing, contract agreements with suppliers, basic supply chain rules, and, tactics and strategies. And from there, I evolved through the company. I was sweeping the floors. I assembled the product, and then I went into the purchasing side of it, and then I went into the manufacturing side as I got older. And then younger guys were able to come in and fill my role, and I was able to teach them the basics, write the procedures, write the instructions, how to do it, when to do it, and so then I went into the manufacturing side, and this is all electronics. Something that I've loved since I was 14, and I've played with it. I've been hands-on with it on the floor, and it's been a long journey.
All I can say is, started from the bottom. Now you're here. That's directly you started from sweeping floors, and to a point of now you are here as the global operations manager, and you've done the just electronics 101 from understanding the process, the supply chain, production, engineering, contracting, EMS side, and having an end product and the procurement. All of that experience is actually sometimes priceless, and I think sometimes you really started from emphasis of not knowing the unknown, and I think your foresight and also enthusiasm in electronics really strived you. Strived to, but it really charged that, and energized you and charged you to learn more, and achieve more, and take you through step by step to different positions in the company you work for.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I've learned a lot, and like you said, and it started when I was young and going through electrical engineering with all the engineers and stuff like that, just making a better product. For our customers, for our colleagues, and having that representation, having that, that brand, right? Having that and being a better brand is what it was all about for us.
Yeah, so awesome. So now it takes us to coming into your role and coming to the IBS Global Group, IBS Electronics Global Group, and really, what's your role here at IBS Electronics, and what are you in charge of?
So at IBS, I wear a hat. We do a lot of different things, and my biggest role here is basically just helping to streamline all our processes, and going to the different offices and building that structure, streamlining the structure, and really moving IBS to that next level to help create more efficiency and to build the processes better. Pick up, old processes and just basically refresh.
Mm-hmm. So
right?
always constant, continuous improvement.
Yeah,
Yeah, continuous improvements on a
always,
daily basis.
yeah, continuous improvement, and of course, getting that buy-in from all of our colleagues and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
so that you know they're also a part of the family and part of making that process improvement better, and just really piggybacking off of that, and as a family, just getting better.
So from the global operations side and creating the processes and synergies and continuously improving things, how does IBS Electronics maintain its quality control and its processes internally?
Well, that's a good question. It's a big question,
Okay.
and just to keep it really simple, you start at a 30,000 foot view,
Okay.
and maintaining quality control. It's a big process from beginning to end. So you start with the customer's requirement, and from there everything starts. Right? You have your basic inputs, your basic outputs. It goes through different processes, and every process has a measurement in place, and all the way to the delivery of the customer, and then the follow up after the customer to give that customer experience. Of course, there's a lot of stuff in between. It's not as simple as that, but you make it easy input, output, and you create customer satisfaction. So what is quality control? It's everything from beginning to end.
Well, nail it on the head on that one. 30,000 foot view. You're 100% correct. That was awesome. Well said. Well said. So moving forward on that is from now hitting the certification points. Because IBS Electronics wasn't ISO approved for, I think, over 20 years. And recently, in the last few years, we've got into the AS standards. So can you explain to us a little bit about ISO and then also going into AS and how ISO and AS are related, but how AS is measured and moving from there for our operation standpoint?
Sure. Yeah. ISO. So, like you said, we've been certified for ISO 9001 since before I was born, honestly, and which is great. I come from manufacturing, and going into this distribution world, it's a great thing to have. It really, builds that sustainability for the future, for the culture, for the people.
Yeah, I mean, I can break it down. The ISO, some people don't know ISO stands for, is International Standards Organization. So it's a standard procedures or process, correct? Does that really, that's the acronym of ISO. Everybody says ISO, but International Standards of Organization. So what does that entail?
Yeah, so that's like the structure of a building or a foundation of a building.
Okay.
Right? You have 10 parts to ISO. Mm-hmm. And those 10 parts is what builds the structure. Okay. Right? So it's like building a house. Okay. You have your walls, you have your flooring, you have your roof, you have that kind of stuff, and that is ISO.
Okay. So then moving into the AS side, how is the AS9100 programs, and how is that related to ISO?
Yeah, so everything's related to ISO. ISO is the basic structure and the foundation of your quality management system. And then AS9120 is basically just, there's a bunch of requirements, and you make those requirements. There's some requirements that are required, and we'll get further down into it a little bit as we go. But AS9120 is basically there's a set number of requirements inside of that ISO 9001 standard that you always want to basically be achievable, maintainable, measurable, all that stuff, traceable.
So for that aspect is the AS, what is the AS standardization? What's the difference? Why would you want to go from ISO to AS?
So it's really, it's a completely different type of standard. A lot of companies that are ISO 9001 are only meeting a certain amount of requirements. So to get to that next level, to get to AS9120, you have to be very, very thorough. There's many, many more detailed requirements inside of the structure, if you will. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
Well,
but
no,
it's another whole nother standard.
Make home the standard benefit. I mean, how does the AS and ISO in general, AS benefit customers or benefit the end user or our customers?
So it really honestly, Any quality management system is going to benefit, the end user or the customer or, your internal processes and stuff like that. But it's really going to allow the organization to have that traceability aspect to it, where it's basically you have it before, but it's not as defined as it is in AS9100 or AS9120.
How is it tracked? How is it traced? How does it track the auditors? How is it? How's the compliance?
Yeah, so if you just want to go say before, say ISO 9001, you just do the basic, hey, here's your receiving inspection and here, ship it to the customer kind of thing. But when you go through AS9120, it really goes into what did I receive, when did I receive it, and more into that is, what's the lot number, what's the date code, are there raw materials involved, is there material specifications required on this order, is there a heat code, and all sorts of stuff that goes back to not just the supplier that you bought it from, but the sub-tier suppliers. So can your sub-tier suppliers trace their raw materials back to their suppliers? And, that's really the big thing with, having any aerospace certification or qualification is you have to go through those audits. You have to go through those checkings because it's a big deal. It's a really, really big deal, especially when, you're flying aircrafts or, engineering parts that goes into war fighters.
Of course, the traceability of the parts. So taking a step back from that, how is these certifications tied in with all the organization in general, from procurement, purchasing, sales, any type of administration? How is that tied in, and how are the standards set for everybody and the deliverables, audited and coming down towards the quality standpoint to the end customer?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So how's the aerospace QMS tied into all the different processes?
Correct.
I wanted.
How about 30,000-foot view, and not to get so detailed?
30,000-foot view. It always goes back to that customer requirement.
Okay.
Right, and verifying that customer's requirement is maintained and properly facilitated through the whole process. Okay. And nurturing that, and it all comes back to knowing what the customer does and what they're doing with it, and that really allows you to understand, from a salesperson to a purchasing person to the warehouse guys, to the inventory, to the accounting side, what the customer's doing, and taking that request for quote and delivering exactly what they need, and being able to measure exactly at every single point in the process that we're giving the correct thing to the customer
on a timely manner within the request.
On time every time.
On time every time.
That's right.
So why did IBS go to AS certifications? Why did it?
I think that's a great question. It's $1 million question, because operations were always about streamlining and making things more efficient, and AS9120, even though we've been ISO certified, ISO 9001 certified for very long time, AS9120 really puts really fastens the bolts, if you will.
Okay.
And we've always kind of had the most rigorous system for a distribution company that I've ever seen in my life, right? And I've been through many audits from manufacturing side, and it's amazing. It's a good question. So we've always had it built into our QMS. The QMS had some parts of it that needed to be updated. So going from ISO 9001-28 to 2015, and then going from 2015 to a AS9120 aerospace QMS program, really transpired or transformed, if you will, the QMS from a kind of a manual, old school QMS process, and it's just streamlined it to a digital, creating more efficiency, creating the processes, creating more smooth processes, and really allowing us to measure each process.
And I think in that AS standards, there's also the compliance comes in, that there's a board that regulates it. And is it this? And customers can audit us, correct? They can come in and look at our audit reports compared to ISO, which is not so public. it's more private. So on the standards with aerospace companies, correct? How does that work?
Yeah, so ISO compared to AS is basically one customer can say that they have ISO 9001, and that's all you can really do from a or one supplier can say they're ISO 9001, and the customer just says okay. But AS 9100 and 9120 aerospace QMS really dives into the transparency of a QMS and everything that goes behind the QMS, like the processes. How do you do this? When do you do this? And how do you measure that you're doing it properly? And how it comes to the auditing standpoint is all that work that you do, all the procedures that you have in place is transparent and visible to the customer.
The customer? Okay.
Yeah, so everything can be audited. The end customer can come in and audit IBS.
Okay.
There's a lot of transparency throughout the whole entire process, where ISO doesn't really have that. You just say you have ISO, and people, they can believe it or not believe it, and don't have to show anything about it.
So on that end is also, I know we're now AS6081. So how does the AS6081 work into AS9120?
Yeah, so AS6081 is a additional counterfeit mitigation procedure or certification, if you will. And it's built on to AS9120, where it's just on top. So on top of AS9120, you have a bunch of requirements.
Okay.
And then AS6081 actually goes into more specifically what you need to do for any parts that are aftermarket, and what kind of testing needs to be done, what level of testing needs to be done, and what do you do with the certain types of commodities that you get that are aftermarket commodities, to really give that thorough, robust quality, to give it your QMS system a bigger touch of security, especially for supply chain.
For supply chain, that ties into, I guess, the big point. It ties into aerospace and military and defense, correct?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Oh yeah.
So that's really solidifies. I think the AS6081 was created for the aerospace and defense supply chain.
Correct.
Yeah. So then for us, going into that is really how that does a full 360. I would think is for adding the value to the customer is the security. Even though we're doing industrial, commercial, consumer, or aerospace, we still have every customer receive the same type of a quality measure and QMS system that we use, correct?
Yes, yes. So AS6080, AS6081, and AS9120, it's not that it just applies to aerospace customers. It applies to every industry.
For every customer.
For every customer.
Yeah.
For every customer. For every supplier. It's not a branch off of the IBS organization, if you will, or a segment or business unit off of the IBS. It's for everybody, and it really strengthens. It's really strengthens our business and the way that we do business, and makes us a higher level, right? And this is kind of the thing that you would expect. For any customers that are doing anything for subcontractors, for Boeing, for Raytheon, for UTC, all the big prime contractors and whatnot, you want to go with a supplier that has AS9120 and AS6081 built into their QMS. At every point, at every level, at every process, all the employees know the importance of their job duties and responsibilities.
100% makes sense. The transparent, everything makes sense there. So with these certifications, how has IBS or our company evolved with the certifications during the pandemic? How has the pandemic, affected the importance of it, and what can we do with it? As I said, during the pandemic, a lot of things have happened the last 7 months.
Yeah.
But how important is it having the certifications and the transparency for the customer during these times?
Yeah, it's critical. It's as I always say it. When we go through training with the staff, whether it's sales or warehouse or what have you, it's very critical, because you always want to make sure that having these certifications, you are knowing what you're doing for your daily job duties and responsibilities, and the part that you might be working on or packaging or selling or quoting to the customer is a part that can go onto a commercial airliner. And so before the pandemic hit, we chose to have that strategic direction, for many reasons. Of course, securing the supply chain. And, it's especially important during a pandemic because there's going to be a shortage of parts or a shortage of raw materials. And, it's really going in deep with the suppliers in your supply chain and figuring out exactly where the parts are being made and how they're getting made. And basically giving that extra boost to your customers.
Security,
yeah. Giving it to our customers and allowing them to feel comfortable that their supply chain is also secured, because we're so in depth of knowing where these materials are coming from. And so going into a pandemic, it was critical in my view to have these certifications. It's just allowed us to do what we got to do.
Yeah, I can thank you for implementing all this and keeping the global operations certified and audited, and as our internal auditor and the certifications that you have. But moving forward, how globally, how is our company continuously improving for the future ahead?
I always like to relate it back to in my experience, because I've been doing electronics my whole life. But it's like going from through-hole technology to surface mount, right? You got to stay up to date on the newest tech, and really digitizing the process, streamlining and making improvements, not just for us to have a sustainable future ahead of us, but also to help secure the supply chain. And our customers are really pushing us and expecting this from us. They're improving us, we're improving them. It's a small supply chain. It's a small world, and we're all here to create a better supply chain.
Yeah, through the digitalization of it.
Through the digital process and stuff like that. And there's a lot involved digitizing, as you know.
Yes. So. I am involved in what the things that you go through and the things that we're trying to implement. And thankfully for digitalization, we were already prepared for this type of pandemic. And a lot of companies that might have had challenges through this, but I think that what you did and implemented through the last couple of years of digitalizing us by 2019, we were pretty much digitalized. And then we were ready, and the disruption wasn't there. The disruption wasn't, we didn't really feel it a lot like others did. We were still processing, we're still working from home, or even our operation, our office, and our warehouse was operating globally, multiple warehouses. So we had that digitalization that people can get the transparency, get the documents, get things moving, get the operation standards, and all that really helped, I think, solidify our whole global operations and standardizations of our company in general.
No, I definitely agree, and thankfully for you, we had a great leader, and we saw what was ahead of us without knowing what was actually ahead of us. The last 2 years has been, before the pandemic's been, it's like seeing into the future, and it's expected of a great leader, and it's expected of a company of our level to be ahead of the curve, and our customers expect us to evolve with them, or we get left in the past.
Yeah, 100%. You can't wait for things to go back to normal to keep moving ahead and keep thinking forward and forward thoughts. So while we wrap this up, question for you is, since you are, as I say, getting to electronics, the future, what's going on, question comes with, what is the future of electronics industry and technology, and where is it going?
Honestly, you can nerd me out here, and I'll go down a rabbit hole. And like the question is I don't know,
multifaceted, different angles.
It's rhetorical, right? Because the future is electronics.
Yes.
Right. And whether it is automation, whether it's robotics, whether it's new technology and AI in itself, and cloud computing and stuff like that. Everything is going to be electronics, and it's just amazing to be a part of it. And
I mean, I 100% agree. I mean, AI, the biggest thing is that some of the conferences we've been to in 2019 or 2020 was a lot of was AI based, and the 5G and the 5G world. And as we're going into it, and the faster broadband we have, and things being connected. So that electronics, the future is infinite. And I think, as we know, as our whole lives are off a device now, of a device, and it's exciting, because more and more electronics in our industry are being used. They're advancing, and the spend and the process supply chain. Even though we're one of the hardware, it's funny, as again, the hardware isn't the sexy side of the software usually is, but actually the hardware is the base of everything. That is the attractive, that we building and innovating a product and just putting a software to process it. At the end of the day is, 5G is not 5G without the chips.
That's right. That's right.
The software is one thing, but the chips are the others, and that's really what we're in. So it's really fascinating, really what we're in for the future. And also it comes to the quality management, the processing, innovating, digitalizing, the production from flow process from start to end, counterfeit mitigation through all the companies out there. And these are a lot of standards, I think, that you've helped our company in general set a benchmark to say, this is our standards. Our standards are at this level. We're going to stay at this level, and make sure that all our customers have the best service, best transparency, and to their deliverables and their requirements to their, to the orders that come in. That's one thing, is that transparency is key, and telling customers like this is what it is, and flowing it back to our suppliers and auditing them. So this whole 365 of supply chain, as sometimes I said, this AS or ISO is not really highly discussed about, usually in the industry. And I think that it has to be more out there, or it has to be marketed more to really educate not just the quality management team, quality policies, the buyers, sales, and also all the leaders or future leaders in the industry, what this means to the product. Without a solidified QMS system, there's nothing.
Yeah.
You can have the best salesperson, but if you have, these are things that it's just the importance is at par. Yeah. And that's why I really I want to bring this out, and that's why I want to have a discussion with you, because I think right now it's
that's a good
it's a hidden secret.
Yeah, it's a good point. I just want to emphasize that, because a lot of companies are so large that the structures do not allow for their management, like yourself, to get involved and to really bring out the quality side in the operations. Yeah. So that's, you bring it home right there, and a lot of quality guys out there will love you for saying it, because they, oftentimes don't get enough support from management.
Like, they have credit. They don't get the credit for what credit's due, and that's why I thank you, and I think our whole global team thanks you and your team and what you're doing for the quality management side, solidifying it, helping with customer, helping with products, helping manufacturers. It really helps us and solidify who we are, and make sure that we have a golden standard of the process we follow to the AS guidelines, and go from there. So, I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, Delano. Thanks for sharing your insights. I know we can get way into it, but we'll keep it surface level for everybody out there, so it's not so technical. Yeah. But once again, thanks, and I look forward to doing another one with you soon. Maybe on electronics and all the computing side.
Anytime.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, guys. And remember, be smart, be thoughtful, be generous. See you on the next Real Talk.